Hey guys, Mike Smith here with Killer Motorsports. A lot of people call in and ask, hey, what do I do when I get my scooter? I've got it assembled. What's the PDI? What's the break-in? What's the maintenance? So we're going to go ahead and go through that on this scooter. Typically when you get a scooter and you get it assembled, what you have to do is put the mirrors on, the trunk, and the windshield. Typically the tires are already on, all the body panels, so there's not much you have to do to it. When you put gas in these things, make sure you put premium gas. They're not going to run good if you put unleaded or the mid-grade stuff. You got to put premium in them. These are Chinese motors, but they're also small motors. They require that they be run a little hotter than the stuff that runs 87. So you got to put 93 in them, 91, the higher type octane that you have at the gas stations. First thing you want to do once you get this thing started is you want to let it sit for about 20 minutes. This is going to do what's called a heat cycle break-in, and what it's going to do is it's going to heat seal the gaskets that are on this motor, so that way you get on it, you ride it real hard, when you first get it. If those gaskets aren't heat sealed yet and they're not bonded to the motor, it can cause those gaskets to crack and essentially cause an oil problem for leaking outside of your motor. So make sure for the first 20 minutes you go ahead and let it just sit. Make sure it doesn't overheat and whatnot. Just let it sit so it heat cycles the motor, and then after that go ahead and drain the oil. You're going to want to put 10W40 semi-synthetic or non-synthetic oil. Don't put any pure synthetic in there because it has additives that can actually eat those gaskets and cause oil leak problems. So make sure you do change oil after that first 20-minute period, and after you go ahead and run probably about 50 miles on it is the first time you want to change oil, and then at 250, 500, and then every 1,000 at that point you can change motor oil. Some people like to do it at 500. It depends on how much you really want to do it. Us up here at Killer, we try to do every 500, but you can go to 1,000. The other thing you want to do is, come around here I guess, is once you hit 1,000 miles on these scooters, is you want to have a mechanic do this, but right underneath here you've got valves. Okay, and 1,000 miles on all scooters, you want to do a valve adjustment. Okay, and basically these valves are right underneath this box right here on every single scooter, and you want to take it to a shop and tell them 1,000 miles you need the valves done. What can happen is the valves get too tight at 1,000 miles, and you have to basically adjust them back to where they're at. And then you want to do that first at 1,000 miles, and then at 3,000 miles, and then at 10,000 miles on the valves. It's underneath here. I'm not going to show you how to do it because I legally can't show you how to do that because some mechanics got to do. But make sure you go ahead and do that. Underneath here, you've also got your battery. Make sure your battery is always, always good. You don't want to be stuck out in the middle of nowhere and then your battery's dead. Typically, the battery's going to be right here, or if you've got one of the smaller scooters, like what's right here, back here, your battery box can be located on the floorboard. On the 250 units that you've got here, some of them have an optional water cooler, which is right here. The filler is right here. Okay. You want to make sure this is full with the antifreeze. It's the 50-50 mix you can buy at Walmart, Target, AutoZone, Pet Boys, and so forth. Make sure you put this, coolant in there, especially if you're in the hotter states. Make sure that's always full. If your gas is always full, you don't want to run out of gas. Whenever you're driving down the road. There's not really anything you have to do in terms of changing the air filter. If you did want to change your air filter, typically it's going to be right here on the side of the scooters. You can take this panel off, this black panel off right here, and your air filter is going to be behind that. You can take that off and change it. Typically on street stuff, you don't really have to do that, but maybe every 500 miles, check it, make sure it's clean, so forth, and put it back on. But it's not going to be like the off-road vehicles where you have to do it, every long ride, because you just don't see dirt, on the road like you're going to see in an off-road vehicle. Make sure everything, when you first get it assembled, make sure all the blinkers work, make sure the headlights work, and you've got all your components here, make sure they're all going to work, because if you're riding down the road and you need to hit your brights, headlights, your your quick flashers, blinkers, and so forth, and you want to make sure that stuff works. On the 250 scooters, if it's got an alarm system, which the 250s do, some of the 150s do, if you want to go ahead and start it with the actual, it's wireless start button is what they call it. If you click the off button once, the actual unlock button, what it's going to do is it's going to turn the motor off. Okay, but if you do not press it twice, the second time, it will not kill the electrical part on the system. It simply just cuts the motor on the first click. The second click kills the electrical. So a lot of people are saying, oh, my battery's going dead, and I'm using this remote start option. Well, it's because they only hit the unlock button once and not twice. The second time kills the electrical, so make sure you remember that. And that's on some of the 150s, but most of the 250s do have that option, so make sure you keep that in mind whenever you're riding this thing. Another thing you want to do, since it is a street vehicle, when you first get the unit and as you're doing the oil changes every once in a while, to make sure your tire pressure is correct. If you have low pressure in the front, high pressure in the rear, then it can cause your scooter to wobble. It can cause miles per gallon to go down. It can cause it to be unsafe. So make sure you read the side of the tire on the tire pressure. Make sure it has the correct tire pressure. That way you're getting the good miles per gallon. You're not going to have wobble and so forth as you're driving down the road, and it's going to be a lot safer. Make sure your axle bolt on the front and the back are going to be tightened, and make sure they're tight. Every time you're going to go out and do your oil change and so forth, just like you do in a car. They check your lug nuts. They go through, check your tire pressure. It's the same type of thing. When you do your oil change on this, same deal. Check your tire pressure. Make sure your wheel bolts are tight and your axle bolts. I would suggest using blue Loctite on these, just because even though they have locker nuts, there is always a chance that those things can spin off. So, it's a small chance, but if you want to be double sure, go ahead and put some blue Loctite on them. Brake adjustments are pretty easy. You want to have a mechanic do this, but if you feel brave enough to do it yourself, on the scooters right here, if your brakes are feeling a little weak, you have a bleeder right here, and you can actually, what you're going to do is get an 8mm wrench and unscrew this just a hair, hit your brakes, make sure they're tight, and then hold them down real hard. You're going to open it up just a little bit until you see some gas, not the gas, the oil come out of here, and as soon as you see some oil come out and the air bubble, go ahead and lock it down again. And do that until your brake is really tight. These things already come, the screws already come pre-bled, but if it's just a little too loose for your taste and you want to tighten it up a little more, you can go ahead and do that, and that'll help. On your throttle, whenever you get these things, sometimes there's some play, a little worse than this, but you want to adjust that play so it's not so bad. What you can do is pop this little rubber piece off. You can adjust this nut out right here, and then what it'll do is it'll take the play out of your throttle. You don't want to do this too much, because if you do it too much, it'll increase your RPM level on this thing, because the throttle cable's out too far. You don't want to do that. You just want to do it just enough so there's not just gobs of play in this thing. Other than that, that's really all you have to do to these scooters. They're pretty simple. They're really easy to maintain. Do your oil changes. Keep on the wheels and the tire pressure and so forth. You shouldn't have any problems. If you have any questions, need any parts, give us a call.